Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday the 23rd. Just getting ready for a round table discussion.
An ABC clip on Donald Trump at the G20 summit recently in Hamburg, the one that went viral online. Well, in case you missed it, here's my colleague Chris Uhlmann on ABC television a fortnight ago.
He was an uneasy, lonely, awkward figure at this gathering, and you got the strong sense that some of the leaders are trying to find the best way to work around him. Donald Trump has pressed fast forward on the decline of the United States as a global leader. He managed to isolate his nation, to confuse and alienate his allies, and to diminish America. He will cede that power to China and Russia, two authoritarian states that will forge a very different set of rules for the 21st century.
Chris Uhlmann, as I said, his video went viral online, and his description of the uneasy, lonely, awkward US president who's damaged American credibility and prestige, it really did strike a chord with many. But is America really in serious decline? After all, the US has the world's strongest military by far. Did you know Washington spends more on defense than the next 12 or so nations combined? And of course, the US economy remains diverse and technologically advanced. So is Chris Uhlmann right? And remember, he's not alone here. Is he right in saying America's declining prestige and influence across the globe is really thanks to Donald Trump and his America First message? Or do you think that other people and events in recent times are to blame for the coming end of a Pax Americana? Remember, the Iraq War and the global financial crisis both took place well before Trump even ran for office. And are there sound national interest reasons for America to jettison the notion of being the world policeman? I mean, why, for instance, should Joe Sixpack, battling to pay a mortgage and worried about wage stagnation, crumbling infrastructure, all that, why should he be paying taxes so that Uncle Sam can meddle endlessly in the Middle East? And finally, and this is important for us, what would a less interventionist and assertive America mean for Australia? After all, the US is our most important security partner in the world. It's been that way more or less since the end of World War II, when the Americans literally saved us. Well, I have a terrific panel this morning. Kim Beazley was our ambassador to the US from 2010 to 2016. He's also a former defence minister in the Hawke government and federal Labor leader twice. He is, for mine, Australia's leading authority on America and our alliance with the US. And John Mearsheimer is Professor of International Relations at the University of Chicago. He is, for mine, the leading foreign policy intellectual in the US, who's author of a forthcoming book tentatively titled Liberal Dreams and International Realities. That's to be published next year by Yale University Press. Kim, John, welcome back to Sunday Extra.
Good to be with you. Likewise, Tom.
John, is Trump really to blame for the decline of American prestige and influence across the globe?
Well, I think there's no question that he has contributed to that in the 6 months that he's been in office. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But the fact that there was a serious decline in our prestige and in our influence in the previous 16 years, and that would include the 8 years of the George W. Bush administration and the 8 years of the Obama administration. It's quite clear that we made one giant mess in the Middle East. The amount of death and destruction that we have helped cause there is really mind-boggling. And furthermore, we've gone a long way towards really messing up relations with the Russians. And this was all before Trump came to power. You want to remember that Donald Trump was elected in large part because there was so much dissatisfaction with the establishment in the United States. And a lot of that had to do with domestic politics, obviously, but a lot of it had to do with foreign policy as well. So the idea that we were doing perfectly well under Bush and Obama, and then along came Trump who messed things up, is an incorrect view of the situation. Things were going downhill under both Bush and Obama. The United States was in trouble in terms of its prestige and influence under both those presidents. And I think it's fair to say it's gotten worse, however, under Trump.
Okay, so just let's clarify here. Your point, John, then, is that the blame for America's diminished influence and prestige lies mainly with a lot of those, neoconservatives, liberal interventionists who have dominated US foreign policy discourse in Washington pretty much since the end of the Cold War or at least since 9/11. That's your line, right?
Yes, for two reasons. One, they messed up in serious ways, and two, they gave us Donald Trump. You want to ask yourself, why is Donald Trump the president of the United States? I think it's truly remarkable that a man as incompetent as Trump is sitting in the White House today. And he is there in large part because there is so much dissatisfaction in the United States with the ruling elites. And that's because they screwed up big time.
Well, Kim, you were one of the many prominent Australians, like John Howard, your old opponent, who during last year's campaign trembled at the prospect of a Trump presidency. Is John Mearsheimer right here? I mean, does the criticism go beyond Trump here?
John's got a point, and it's a difficult point to argue against. I'd go slightly down a different road, I think. And that is that the United States is not in decline. The United States is going through another industrial revolution. The United States economy is just about the strongest around, and its underpinnings are stronger than anyone else's. The Chinese move on to a somewhat different drummer, but they've got enormous weaknesses. So in terms of objective decline, it is not in decline. The United States, however, is in a situation of changing relativities. And that was made very clear in a very good publicly released part of the study anyway by the American intelligence community at the beginning of the year, in which they pointed out that the way in which the globe was moving very directly away from any single power dominance, particularly United States dominance. It was not necessarily moving in a peaceful direction, and there was likely to be a whole range of issues raised by state and non-state actors that were going to be difficult to resolve, and conflict was highly likely. And the role that the United States would play in all this is somewhat problematic. I just take this view. If it had been Biden up against Trump, not Hillary Clinton, Biden would have carried probably 40 states. Politics tends to be a shaving the margins exercise. You know, the basic reason why Trump won in voting terms, not in terms of the whoop and woof of the directions of American views about the elite, is that in the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, whereas Obama polled 45% of the white working class, Hillary polled 34%. If Hillary had polled 40%, she would have won, and she'd have been president there. We'd have a different discussion on the basis of what constituted American decline, and discussion would probably be slightly different. So there's objective underpinnings, and then there's the underpinnings that come from American state policy and politics. Trump's a complete disaster. He does not have a capacity to arrive at a sensible foreign policy, trade policy, or anything else, and he's shunned by the rest of the world. You wait till the next economic crisis or the next major big security blow-up, who are they going to ring?
Yes, well, I mean, on that note, John, I mean, Kim Beazley here is placing a lot of emphasis on personalities here. Are you sold? I mean, if you look at those Pew Research Center global surveys, they were reported, I think it was just last month, a survey of something like 37 countries. It found a median of just 22% had confidence in Donald Trump to do the right thing in foreign policy, compared with 64% in the final years of Obama's presidency. Only Russia and Israel rated Trump higher than Obama. So is Kim Beazley right to emphasize the personalities here?
No, I think he's definitely right. I think there's no question that American prestige and influence has declined under Trump. But I would argue that it had declined under Obama, and it had declined under George W. Bush as well. And it's because the United States had proved to be especially incompetent in foreign policy. I think that most people in East Asia, and this includes Australians, did not get a good sense of how incompetent the United States has been over the past 16 years, in large part because the United States did not cause much trouble in East Asia. The two areas of the world that caused lots of trouble were, number one, mainly the Middle East, and number two, Europe with the Russian crisis. But we basically kept our powder dry in East Asia, and therefore Obama and Bush, they look pretty good from the perspective of anyone who lives in that area of the world. But from an American point of view, just sort of looking out at all the foreign policy disasters that we helped create, it couldn't help but generate a sense that something was fundamentally wrong. And this, of course, was true at the domestic level as well. And this is what helped elect Trump.
Yeah, but John, just to keep you on your toes here, I mean, many of the, if you like, intellectually honest critics of Trump's foreign policy, they would say that Obama also presided over global retreat. And you look at the results, you know, they would argue a vacuum filled by the world's nastiest actors. You know, you've got serious civil war, an expansionist Russia, and increasingly assertive China. In other words, aren't there costs to the world if America does not lead?
Well, this argument that Obama led an American retreat is a myth, mainly purveyed by the right for the purposes of belittling Obama. Obama just didn't insert large numbers of ground forces in the wars that he started or helped start. I mean, Obama started a war in Libya, or he got the Americans involved in Libya. He got the Americans involved in Syria. He upped the ante in Afghanistan. He promised to leave office with all the troops out of Afghanistan, and he didn't. When he left office, there were more NATO and American troops in Eastern Europe than there were when he first took office. The idea that we were in a strategic retreat under Barack Obama doesn't mesh with the historical record.
Kim, John's critics on both the left and the right will say that without American global leadership, the increasing signs of world disorder, this is what they would argue, will be portents for much worse to come. I mean, who's right here? Are the realists like John Mearsheimer and Henry Kissinger, or your old hawkish buddies like Hillary Clinton and John McCain, who, incidentally, we hope recovers from his brain cancer he was diagnosed with this week? Who's right here, Kim? The realists or the more hawkish members of the American foreign policy establishment?
I'm always for realism. I think you may have certain principles you want to uphold, and they are important, but you also have to have a realistic assessment of the globe or any situation in which you seek.
Yeah, but hang on, can I just cut you off there? Because a lot of realists will say that they actually refute the notion of American global leadership. You are one of Australia's leading exponents of American global leadership. Can you have it both ways?
Yeah, look, the point I try to make all the time is that the United States operates in a sphere globally that it doesn't control. I mean, that intelligence report at the beginning of the year, which ought to be read by everybody with an interest in Australian strategic studies, describes the globe as it is, describes the changing relativities between different regions, different countries, the authority of countries, and the likelihood that the shifts that are taking place now are going to produce a series of troubles. Now, it's not up to the United States to resolve all of those, nor is it up to anyone else to resolve them. But those problems, as they emerge, both globally and locally, are going to impact on the interests of a multiplicity of powers. And it remains the case that if what is required is going to be of a substantial financial or organisational character, like an Ebola crisis, or of a military character, there's only one power that really has the capacity to utilise that element of its power in any of those situations. Whether they choose to do so or not will be a matter for the future. There's no doubt at all that the mistaken intervention in Iraq, which is, I would argue, is probably the single most unmitigated strategic disaster of the post-World War II era, has certainly created a series of issues. But simply because the United States made a serious error there does not mean that it won't be wanted elsewhere as things evolve. Look, if there's a global financial crisis next year, guess who they're going to be ringing?
Yeah. If you've just tuned in, you're with me, Tom Switzer from RN. I'm chatting with our former ambassador to the US, Kim Beazley, and Professor John Mearsheimer from the University of Chicago. The subject, that Chris Uhlmann clip on Trump that went viral. And the question here is, how does American decline affect Australia? Now, before we get to the implications of all this for Australia, let me just ask you, John, you've obviously been a critic of the notion of American global leadership, benign global hegemony, Pax Americana. I think Madeleine Albright put it best when she said America was the indispensable nation. This is the mindset that has gripped Washington since the end of the Cold War and the collapse of Soviet communism. What's the alternative?
Well, the alternative is what I would call offshore balancing. And this is where the United States goes to great lengths to remain the most powerful state in the world. But it principally worries about the rise of a potential hegemon in either Europe or in East Asia. and possibly the Persian Gulf as well. And at this point in time, there's only one potential.
I nearly forgot the end of the video. Back immediately.